In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like life suddenly became quiet around you? Friends disappear, relationships crumble, doors close, and the noise of the world seems to fall away, leaving you in an unfamiliar silence. It may feel like abandonment. It may feel like punishment. But what if it's something far more intentional? What if your isolation is not a consequence of failure, but the sign of an initiation? There is a sacred pattern hidden beneath the surface of our lives that unfolds just before transformation. It is a moment when the universe pulls you away from distractions, illusions, and attachments, because something within you is awakening. You are not being discarded. You are being refined. Ancient traditions have spoken of this space in many ways. In mystical Judaism, it's the midbar, the desert of silence where the soul meets the divine. In Eastern thought, it's the retreat into stillness before enlightenment. Even in alchemy, it is the black phase of nigredo, where the old self dissolves so that the true self can emerge. Across all spiritual lineages, one truth echoes. Before elevation, there is separation. Your current state may look like chaos, but beneath it is a deeper order, designed by the intelligence of the universe to realign you with your higher path. This journey is not theoretical. It is deeply personal. And if you're reading this, it may already be happening to you. You are being drawn into the void, not to be forgotten, but to remember. Remember who you were before the noise, before the conditioning, before the world told you who to be. In the pages that follow, we'll explore why the universe separates you before it elevates you. We'll unravel the metaphysics behind solitude, decode the energetic laws that govern transformation, and discover how your current isolation could be the doorway to your next spiritual expansion. If you've ever felt like something deeper is calling you, but the world no longer fits, this message is for you. Shall we begin? In the natural order of the cosmos, expansion is always preceded by contraction. A breath cannot be exhaled unless it is first drawn in. The tide cannot rise without first receding. Even the universe itself, as some physicists propose, may one day contract into a singularity again, only to explode outward in another cycle of birth. This rhythm of drawing in before reaching out is not just a physical phenomenon. It is a metaphysical law, and it governs the unfolding of consciousness as well. The Hermetic principle of rhythm, one of the 7 foundational laws described in the Kabbalion, teaches that all things move in measured cycles. There is a time to gather and a time to release, a time to act and a time to be still. When your life enters a phase of silence, solitude, or separation, it is not an accident. It is the contraction before the expansion. This cycle is evident in every mystical tradition. In the Judeo-Christian narrative, Moses was exiled into the desert before returning as a liberator. Jesus disappeared into solitude for 40 days before beginning his ministry. In Eastern traditions, the Buddha abandoned his royal life and meditated alone beneath the Bodhi tree before reaching enlightenment. Across continents and cultures, those who awaken are first drawn into retreat. They are removed from the noise of society and plunged into an inner wilderness. Why? Because transformation cannot occur amid constant distraction. The ego thrives in noise, but the soul is revealed in silence. Separation from the external world is a sacred invitation to commune with the deeper self, the unchanging core that lies beyond identity, status, and desire. It is in this space that the universe begins its real work, breaking down what is false so that what is true may arise. Mystics often describe this phase as the dark night of the soul. St. John of the Cross, who coined the term, wrote that this darkness is not a punishment, but a passage. It is the moment when all familiar lights go out, not to leave us lost, but to awaken the light within. In the absence of validation, companionship, and certainty, we are forced to look inward. And what we find there, if we have the courage to keep looking, is the seed of something eternal. In metaphysical terms, this is called the void phase, a liminal space between what was and what is to come. It is the death of the old vibration, the dismantling of an identity that no longer resonates with your soul's purpose. This void is not empty in the negative sense. It is potent with potential. The formless is the birthplace of all form. In quantum mechanics, the vacuum is not nothing. It is a field teeming with possibility. The same is true for the soul. When life pulls you into stillness, it is not removing your worth. It is preparing a new frequency to emerge. Many resist this process. They try to force reconnection with the familiar, chase validation, or numb the silence. But in doing so, they delay the inevitable. Because no elevation can occur without this sacred pause. Without space, there can be no growth. Without surrender, there can be no revelation. Esoteric traditions teach that before one can receive light, one must first be emptied of shadow. This is not simply poetic language. It is vibrational truth. You cannot resonate with a higher timeline while clinging to attachments rooted in fear, shame, or ego. The universe, in its infinite intelligence, knows this. And so it initiates the separation. It contracts your world, not to crush you, but to purify you. To prepare you for what only the soul, free from interference, can carry. You may feel like everything is falling away. You may wonder why the things that once gave you comfort now feel foreign. You may even question your path. But know this. These are signs not of misalignment, but of deeper alignment in progress. What no longer serves you cannot come with you, and what is meant for you will never reject your truth. This is the threshold, the pause between inhale and exhale, the moment before the seed breaks through the soil. Do not rush it. Do not resent it. This is where light is conceived, in the dark, in the quiet, in the space where you think nothing is happening, because that is where everything is beginning. The moment you begin to shift, the universe responds, not always with celebration, but often with removal. Things you once relied on begin to dissolve. People who once understood you no longer speak your language. Situations that once felt safe suddenly feel suffocating. At first, it feels like loss, but look closer. You are not being punished. You are being recalibrated. Every soul carries a vibrational frequency. It's not metaphorical. It's energetic law. This frequency is shaped by your thoughts, emotions, actions, and inner alignment. According to quantum field theory, all matter exists as vibrational energy before it becomes observable form. In spiritual terms, what you call reality is simply a reflection of your internal resonance. When your vibration rises, your external world must shift to reflect it. This includes people, habits, beliefs, and even environments. Dr. David R. Hawkins, in his seminal work, Power versus Force, created a map of consciousness that charts emotional states and their vibrational frequencies. Shame and guilt sit at the bottom. Love, joy, peace, and enlightenment sit near the top. When your consciousness begins to ascend, anything resonating at lower frequencies becomes incompatible. Like oil and water, they no longer blend. This is why things fall away. It's not personal, it's energetic. That friendship that suddenly ended, that job you couldn't tolerate anymore, that identity you used to cling to, now crumbling? They were aligned with an older version of you, a version rooted in survival, ego, or unconscious patterns. And that version cannot enter the next chapter of your soul's evolution. Carl Jung said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. These disguises often come in the form of relationships and situations that mirror your inner state. But when you begin to rise, those mirrors crack, and what was once familiar becomes a weight." In esoteric alchemy, this phase is known as solve, the dissolution, the breaking apart of old matter to prepare it for recombination in a higher form. What dissolves is not lost, it is transmuted, but first, it must be released. You cannot carry dead weight into divine territory. This is also where the shadow emerges, the parts of you that cling to comfort, approval, or past identity. It resists change, fearing loss of control. But this resistance is the very fire that forges clarity. The loss you experience is not the universe's rejection, it is your own shedding. The parts of you that were never true are falling away. What remains is what has always been real. In shamanic traditions, this process is called dismemberment. a symbolic or visionary experience where the initiate's body or psyche is taken apart, only to be reassembled with greater power and wisdom. This mirrors the psychological and energetic death that occurs when we release attachments that no longer serve. The self must be deconstructed so the soul can emerge. Real life reflects this with uncanny precision. The moment you set a clear intention to grow, the universe tests your commitment. Not by giving you more, but by taking things away. It strips away distractions. It surfaces hidden fears. It reveals which relationships thrive on your silence rather than your truth. And in that exposure, you are given a choice. Cling to the familiar or step into the unknown. This is the purging, and it hurts because it mimics grief. But what you are grieving is not your truth. It is your illusion. You are grieving the roles you played to be accepted, the patterns you normalized to feel safe, the cages you mistook for homes. Stillness is painful when you are used to running. Silence is uncomfortable when you are used to external validation. But this discomfort is sacred. It is the sign that the old template is dissolving. You are making space for new codes, higher timelines, aligned relationships. The path of elevation requires emptiness. Just as a vessel must be emptied before it is filled with new wine, so too must your life be cleared before it can be blessed. And so, the universe does what you cannot. It removes what is not rooted in your highest truth, not to break you, but to free you. When something leaves, ask not why it left, but why it stayed so long. Ask yourself who you had to be to maintain it, then bless it and let it go. Because what's coming speaks the language of your becoming, and it cannot enter a life still full of who you no longer are. It is one of the most piercing illusions on the spiritual path, the feeling that we have been abandoned by life, by people, by the very force we trusted to guide us. After the falling away described in the last chapter, after the friends are gone, the identity dissolves, and the familiar becomes foreign. Many are left in the aching stillness of what seems like divine neglect. But this silence is not neglect. It is initiation. The universe has not turned its face from you. It has turned you toward your own. Throughout the ancient world, spiritual initiations were always preceded by a rite of separation. In the mystery schools of Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, aspirants were removed from their communities, stripped of their titles, and cast into symbolic darkness. This was not a punishment. It was a sacred necessity. Before one could hold divine wisdom, one had to empty oneself of worldly noise. Initiation always begins with isolation. It is a universal archetype, the exile, the outsider, the wanderer in the desert. In mythology and mysticism alike, we see this sacred exile repeated. The initiate is removed from the known world and led into liminal space, the realm between identities. The goal is not to punish, but to dissolve egoic illusions and prepare the soul for deeper revelation. In the Gnostic tradition, this descent is understood as a necessary fracturing. The soul, born into the density of matter, must remember itself through suffering. This echoes the words of the Gospel of Thomas. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. But what is within can only be accessed in silence. Modern culture sees solitude as failure, as a space to be escaped. But esoteric wisdom understands solitude as a portal, a place of re-encoding where divine intelligence can whisper unfiltered. It is not that the universe goes silent, it's that finally you can hear it. The pineal gland, often called the seat of the soul, has long been revered in mystical teachings as the gateway between physical and spiritual perception. When we retreat from overstimulation, emotional chaos, and the social matrix, this inner gateway begins to activate. We dream more vividly. We receive intuitive insights. We sense patterns others overlook. This is not imagination, it is reconnection. During this phase, many experience what feels like a loss of self. They no longer resonate with who they were, yet they don't yet know who they're becoming. This in-between is the initiatory fire. It burns away false layers, not all at once, but in stages. The outer world offers no mirrors here, no applause, no permission, only silence. And in that silence, something holy occurs. Your authentic self begins to surface. This is when many people question their path, doubt their intuition, or feel tempted to retreat into the old self. But that path is closed. The old self has already been deconstructed. What now remains is choice. Will you stay in the ashes or rise with the truth that remains? In Kabbalistic mysticism, the Tzimtzum, the divine contraction, is the process through which God created space for the universe by withdrawing. This sacred withdrawal is echoed in our own transformations. When the divine pulls back, it is not to disappear, but to create a void in which something new may emerge. Likewise, when the universe withdraws the familiar from your life, it is not vanishing. It is carving space for the next version of you. The key is to stop resisting this space, to stop running from the silence. Instead, enter it intentionally. Create sacred rituals. Journal your questions. Breathe consciously. Walk in nature. Practice the art of non-doing. These acts are not passive. They are powerful acts of alignment. They attune your being to the frequency of truth. In this chapter of your life, you are not broken. You are being initiated. You are not without direction. You are in the space between maps. And soon, a new path will unfold. But only if you have the courage to remain present in the wilderness long enough to see the stars emerge. You were not abandoned. You were chosen. And the silence is where your soul begins to speak. By now, the pattern begins to reveal itself. What first appeared as loss was actually alignment. What seemed like silence was sacred instruction. And what felt like isolation was the birthing ground for something ancient inside you, a remembrance, a reconnection, a reactivation. You were never being erased. You were being rewritten. The final phase of this sacred journey is what mystics call the return. After the descent into the void, after the ego has been dissolved and the soul reawakened, a new emergence begins. You come back into the world, but not as you were. You return with clarity, with power, with alignment. And the world meets you differently because your frequency is no longer the same. This is the point at which elevation becomes visible. The subtle inner work you did in stillness now manifests as external synchronicities, new connections, opportunities, or intuitive certainty. This is not coincidence. It is the vibrational consequence of your transformation. One of the lesser-known metaphysical laws is the law of vacuum. It states that the universe abhors a vacuum and will always seek to fill empty space. When your life is cleared through separation, loss, solitude, that space is not meant to remain void. It is designed to be filled by something of higher resonance. But it can only arrive when you stop resisting the emptiness and begin to trust its function. What you once called loneliness was actually space being made. Space for new love, deeper truth, higher creativity, and authentic presence. Space for you to reconnect not only with Source, but with your soul's unique signature. And once that alignment is embodied, you begin to attract realities that reflect who you truly are, not who you pretended to be. This moment of return is quiet. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. You simply notice that you no longer crave the things you lost. You realize that the opinions that once shaped you no longer define you. You feel lighter, clearer, more sovereign, more rooted in your own being. And then, almost without effort, the right people appear. The right opportunities find you. The path that once felt hidden unfolds beneath your feet. What changed? Not the world. You did. And the universe simply mirrored it back. There's a passage in the Tao Te Ching that reads, "When the student is ready, the teacher appears. When the soul is aligned, the way is clear." This is not poetry. It is spiritual physics. Your outer world bends to meet your inner world. And that alignment becomes impossible when you're surrounded by noise, attachments, or misaligned energies. That's why separation was the first act. Not to wound you, but to wake you. Not to exile you, but to elevate you. You were separated to be seen, not by the world necessarily, but by your soul. And now that you see yourself clearly, you no longer chase what is unworthy of you. You no longer beg for crumbs of connection. You no longer shapeshift to fit into false rooms. You carry your truth like a frequency, and only what resonates will remain. In real life, this means trusting the path of authenticity, even when it looks like loneliness. It means saying no to what doesn't align, even when it's all you've ever known. It means choosing silence over noise, depth over surface, presence over performance. Because once you've tasted the clarity of the sacred void, you can never go back to pretending. This, ultimately, is the gift of separation. It makes you whole. It reveals the inner compass you forgot you had. And it teaches you that elevation doesn't come from striving, but from surrendering to the deeper rhythm guiding your life. So if you find yourself in that liminal space right now between what was and what's next, trust it. You're not behind. You're being prepared. And what's meant for you is already seeking you. All you have to do is stay present. And now, as we close this journey, I invite you to reflect. Have you experienced this sacred separation? Have you mistaken your preparation for punishment? What wisdom is waiting for you in the stillness? If this message resonated with you, leave a comment below with the word chosen to affirm your journey and honor the path you're on. Share this with someone who may be lost in their own void right now. They might just need this light. And if you feel called to explore more truths, mysteries, and wisdom like this, I invite you to dive deeper into this channel. Every step forward begins with awareness. And sometimes all we need is one sacred truth to change everything. You were not left behind. You were set apart. You were separated so you could rise.